What's up, Flannelers? It is time for Thursday Night Football. We've got the Bills at the Texans. Man, I am blurry. Not sure what's going on with my camera. Hopefully that is going to be okay. Going to be doing the usual position by position breakdown, starting with quarterbacks, then running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, talking about usage trends, defensive matchups, all that kind of stuff. We're going to be starting with quarterbacks as usual. While you're coming in, please do like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're not already subscribed. Trying to get to 6,000 subscribers by the end of the NFL season and could use your support. Like Larry, appreciate you, Larry, joining as a member. Always cool to see. Thanks a lot, Larry. And yes, as Dan says, please do again like the video while you are coming in here. And of course, if you have not already tried out Run the Sims, you can get 50% off your first payment on any NFL product using promo code Neil. Highly recommend checking it out at whatever level you play if you haven't already checked it out. All right, starting with quarterbacks, Josh Allen, 12,400. I just reran my Sims here, and I haven't done anything to the input, so this is just using the inputs at Run the Sims, their ownership numbers, as well as their inputs in terms of usage. Josh Allen, they're still projecting for 42% flex ownership, 42% captain ownership. Using those numbers, I got to 57% in the flex, which is well over the field, but then just 13% at captain for Josh Allen. I want to compare to elsewhere. Yeah, I mean, oh no, Roto-Grinders does not have. Let me try resetting this. I can't recall seeing 42%. I guess it makes sense on a slate where we just don't have that many sure things. Josh Allen, obviously a pretty sure thing. Yeah, RG has him at 27% captain ownership. Obviously makes a pretty big difference, 27% versus 42%. I might move down the projected ownership slightly just because that seems higher than you typically see on anybody on a showdown slate. As you can see here, the optimal rate for Josh Allen is 22%. So if you have him at 42%, as you would expect, going to be underweight there. As far as stacking, I don't think you need to have Josh Allen stacked up anywhere in your lineup. Again, he has 10 rushing touchdowns on the season in 10 games. So if you're rushing for a touchdown per game, he obviously has the upside to rush for multiple touchdowns in a game, rushing for about 35 yards per game. So he can obviously get there without bringing along pass catchers. Also spreads the ball around quite a bit. So Josh Allen, one of the better quarterbacks as far as ability to play him unstacked. Typically, though, I'm going to have him stacked up if for no other reason than, yeah, he has a lot of pass catchers that are pretty cheap that you're just going to get into your lineups naturally. So probably not going to play him by himself too often, but it is, I think, viable relative to some other most other quarterbacks. Should note, we did get inactives already. Keon Coleman is inactive, so that was kind of expected all day, but yeah, it is official now. Keon Coleman not playing tonight. I don't think we got any other surprising inactive news. Dameon Pierce was dropped today by the Texans, in case you missed that. So don't have to worry about Dameon Pierce cutting into that backfield. But generally, as expected, as far as actives and inactives. How about Fairbairn? I don't think Fairbairn was ever in question, but let me double check that. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I guess I didn't realize that Cami Fairbairn was somebody we were worried about. But let me again double check. No, Fairbairn is active. No concern there. Curtis Samuel is out as expected. Kincaid is out as expected. It's all the usuals are, or all the expected players are out. Braxton Berrios, if you were concerned about him at all, Braxton Berrios is inactive. I believe he was for last week's game as well. So yeah, no real surprises in terms of the inactives. All right, let me move on to Houston kicker. It is Cami Fairbairn. I'm fairly certain, but let me double check. Yeah, Cami Fairbairn. He was not on the inactives list. On the Houston side, Davis Mills projected for 38 flex ownership, 6% captain ownership. Using those numbers, I got to 46% in the flex, 4% at captain. That all seems fine. I'm overweight in the flex, underweight at captain. Makes sense to me. He's 9,600, so relatively cheap for a quarterback, but like not like he's super cheap either. We have some other pay ups that look pretty good, so no real concern when it comes to playing around the field with Davis Mills. They do rank 7th in terms of pass rate over expectation in the 2 games with Davis Mills starting. So if you were concerned about the Texans just running the ball, now that they have Davis Mills, I'm actually not positive that he is a huge downgrade from CJ Stroud. That based on a conversation with my friend Scott Barrett suggested a couple weeks ago that he wasn't sure that Davis Mills is a huge downgrade from CJ Stroud. And like in terms of the output, I don't really think he has been as much as I maybe had thought coming in. So Davis Mills has looked okay. Again, seventh in terms of pass rate over expectation in the games he has started. Now, no great matchups here. In most parts of the game, not great for either of the quarterbacks. It's a slightly negative matchup for Josh Allen, and it's the second worst matchup for Davis Mills in terms of quarterback schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed to the position over the past 5 weeks. So not a great spot for either quarterback. It's only a single game, so it's not like a reason to rule them out. As far as Davis Mills, I am stacking him regardless of where I have him in the lineup. If I have him in the captain spot, I prefer to have him with multiple pass catchers. He has rushed for a touchdown in one of his two starts, so I guess he's running more than usual, but still not much of a rusher throughout his career. So I would like to have him stacked up when I have Davis Mills in the lineup. All right, let's move on to running backs. I also want to know, I might end the stream a little bit early. I usually do go up until lock. This one I'll probably cut off 10 minutes or so early. I have an appointment I need to get to, so I need to get out of the door like right at the time that the game is locking. So I'll probably try to get out of here a little bit early if I can. Just want to give you guys fair warning about that. Running backs, we'll start with the Buffalo side. James Cook, 11,400, projected for 28% flex ownership, 22% captain ownership. Using those numbers, I got to 53% in the flex, so way over the field on James Cook, 13% captain, slightly under the field there for James Cook. I might try to, even these things out a little bit with Cook and Woody Marks. You can already see the exposure I have on Woody Marks. I'll talk about that in a minute with Houston. But Cook, looks good. He has a strong workload. If we look at just the past couple of weeks, since I've got that already pulled up, James Cook has 29 carries, also has 8 targets in the past 2 weeks on 40% route participation. This is higher than throughout his career. The 8 targets in two games. He's not somebody who typically gets 4 targets per game on the season. 2.3 targets per game on the same, 41% route participation. Has 182 carries on the season, so that'd be 18.2. Easy math when they've played 10 games. 18.2 carries per game for James Cook. Strong workload. Again, not a great matchup here with the Bills. With the Texans. Texans have allowed the 8th fewest schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to the running back position. But again, you'd expect the Bills to probably win this game. I actually haven't even looked at what is the line here. Oh yeah, Bills favored by 5.5, so not like a huge spread here, but I guess the game is in Houston. Bills expected to win, and James Cook, just the kind of runner who can put up big runs against any defense. It is a fast, tough Houston defense, so it'll be tough there. But he gets a pretty strong workload. I think that this looks reasonable. I would like to have a fair amount of James Cook. Again, I think I might shift more of my exposure from flex to captain, but not the biggest priority for me. Like I'm already getting to 66%. That looks pretty good. Beyond James Cook, we have Ty Johnson and Ray Davis. Ty Johnson, 3,400 projected for 8% flex ownership. Ray Davis, 1,400 projected for 2% flex ownership. Neither of them getting any at captain. Using those numbers, I got to 4% in the flex for Ty Johnson, 0% for Ray Davis. This is a struggle for me as somebody who loves playing running backs because I think that their range of outcomes is kind of underrepresented typically in sims, like the outcome where the contingent upside, like if anything were to happen to James Cook, I think that tends to be underrepresented in sims. So I typically do like the backup running back angle better than the sims would indicate. On the other hand, this is a slate that we have a lot of other cheap angles that I like to play, so not as big of a priority for me. I still might try to get to a bit more than I'm getting right now. Ty Johnson, again, we can pull up just the past 2 games for Ty Johnson. His role is kind of all over the place, but the past 2 games, 2 carries, 4 targets on 39% route participation. So decent workload. But again, he's the type of third down back that I kind of like on showdown sites. Like he has clear standalone value. And you just see there are times when a guy like Ty Johnson just not going to be used at all. But then other games where they're going to get into that, 2-minute drill and he becomes their full-time running back and suddenly racks up 3 catches for 40 yards in one drive, and that carries him most of the way. Even if he doesn't score a touchdown, carries him most of the way to his salary. So I do like him a bit. 8% ownership, not low enough that he's like a huge priority, but I wouldn't mind getting to a bit more than the 4% I'm getting to now. If I would prefer to be above weight, I think, on Ty Johnson. So I'll probably move some of my exposure there. And then Ray Davis, mostly just contingent upside. Again, he's 1,400 projected for 2% flex ownership. If anything were to happen to James Cook, you would think at that point he's getting a lot of the work as a pure runner on first and second down. So not a ton of standalone value. Again, past couple weeks, Ray Davis, 2 total carries, 2 targets on 4% route participation, but does have awesome contingent upside. So at 2%, I would prefer to be above weight there, but not, I don't, he's not a huge priority for me. Maybe I'll try to get to 5% or so of Ray Davis. On the other side, we have Woody Marks and Nick Chubb. And you can see here, the Sims are loving Woody Marks, 9,200 projected for 28% flex ownership, 5% captain ownership. Using those numbers, I got to 41% in the flex and 33% at captain. Major exposure going to Woody Marks. I'll probably cut back on it some, but I also think like it makes sense to be overweight on Woody Marks. One of the few spots is actually a pretty strong matchup for Houston. Let's see, it's the 10th best, if I counted that right quickly. 10th best schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed per game matchup for running backs. It is particularly good for running backs on the ground as opposed to through the air. It's actually a negative matchup for running backs over the past 5 weeks, but a really strong matchup for running backs on the ground. Woody Marks over the past couple games. Hang on. Woody Marks has 32 carries, so that's 16 carries per game and a couple targets per game on 38% route participation. Fairly strong workload for Woody Marks. And if they do run the ball more here, as you might expect in a matchup that is kind of a run funnel with the Bills, I would expect the carries to go up for Woody Marks. So he does look like a fairly strong play at 9,200 and just projected for 33% ownership. Now, I do want to double check that ownership against elsewhere. Looks like Roto Grinders has him at 5% captain and 26% flex. So they have him at 31% total ownership, so even lower. So yeah, Woody Marks looking like a strong play here at ownership at 9,200, given his workload. I do anticipate that I will be pretty significantly overweight there. And then you have Nick Chubb is 3,200 projected for 11% flex ownership. I got to 7%. Nick Chubb is sort of a tough case. I'm going to read off some coach speak on Woody Marks and Nick Chubb. Over the past couple of weeks, just 8 carries for Nick Chubb. That's 4 per game. 3 targets on just 10% route participation. So he's being targeted when he's out there, but just 10% route participation, not typically considered much of a pass catcher. You can kind of interpret the coach speak however you want when it comes to these running backs. I generally would say I interpret it as being pretty positive for Woody Marks more than anything, but let me just read off some of the coach speak here. Actually, more generally on November 9th, D'Amico Ryan said, our young guys continue to impress. Woody Marks, Jaden Higgins, all of them. Jalen Noel makes big plays every game. It was fun to see. Okay, that's all he had to say on Woody Marks. But then on the 10th, head coach D'Amico Ryans again said, Woody Marks played fast yesterday. He made plays, especially plays on the perimeter, which is where we've seen him shine the most when he can get the ball in space. He did a really nice job of handling the bulk of the carries for us. When Nick Chubb came in and got his opportunities, he had some explosive runs. He ran physical. He looked like he had a little extra burst to him. It was a good 1-2 punch that we were able to use. So note the 1-2 punch is the terminology on the 10th. On the 12th, offensive coordinator Nick Caley on what went into Woody Marks taking the bulk of snaps last week and whether this is still a game plan rotation or has Marks taken the lead back role. He said you go into a game and you try to have balance in a variety of ways, and sometimes you get into a rhythm. He played well, and he was playing well down the stretch. I think he and Nick Chubb complement each other. Woody did well. It's hard to say how every game is going to go, but he did a great job, and I thought he played consistent throughout the game. Happy with his performance for sure. On what Caley had seen from Woody Marks to be able to hand 60 snap workload, just consistency. He's gotten better every single week, not just as a runner. Obviously, he can catch the ball, but then he can also put his face on guys and be physical and blitz pickup. That's a big part of what we ask those guys to do. So it's just a complete package and continuing to get better and learning from things as we go. I think there's a bit more. Oh yeah, on the 18th, offensive coordinator Nick Caley said, "We want to establish the run. That's what we always try to do. That's what I believe in. That's what we believe in." Um, so he never said like, "Yeah, it's a bit much. I think we should give more work to Nick Chubb. We need to get Nick Chubb more involved." I kind of take that as all pretty bullish for Woody Marks for the most part. Like, yeah, he's done really well with the work that we've given him. There was no kind of indication that like usually oftentimes they'll make concessions like, "Oh yeah, we do need to get the veteran more involved." You even hear it with like David Montgomery, like, "Oh, we need David Montgomery more involved." We didn't really get that with Nick Chubb. It's kind of like, yeah, you never really know game to game, but we're happy with what Woody Marks is doing. My interpretation of that is we're probably going to expect more Woody Marks going forward, but also I wouldn't be surprised if the full pie just grows for the running game in a matchup where it would make a ton of sense for them to run the ball a lot. So ultimately, I think Woody Marks looks great here. I think it makes sense to play a ton of Woody Marks. I also think that I'm more bullish on Nick Chubb than this exposure, so I might bump Nick Chubb just slightly. I think he's still capable of getting like a goal line carry and converting for a touchdown. So while he does look fairly washed relative to the Nick Chubb we know and love, I do think he's a reasonable play at 11%, 32% ownership. I don't think I'm going to get like well over the field there or anything like I am with Woody Marks, but I think the field has it about right on Nick Chubb. Dare Ogunbowale, British Brooks. I didn't get to any of either of them. The case you can make for either of them is that they are 200 and 400. They don't have to do much to pay off their salary, but with so much value on the slate, I don't think I'm going to prioritize getting to either of Ogunbowale or Brooks. Neither of them has a carry or has run a route over the past 2 weeks. All right, I'm going to move on to receivers, but I'm going to check in on chat first. All right. I'm getting behind a little bit. All right. FanDuel, if I hopefully I'll have time later. Again, I have to get out of here a little bit earlier than usual, but we'll see if I can find some time while I'm running the Sims later. Yeah, it's viable to fade Captain Allen if you want to. Like, it's a big risk, obviously, but if you want to take on that risk, you got the bankroll for it. Why not? Um, yeah, it's Fairbairn tonight. If it's a field goal, it's going to be Fairbairn. All right. Sorry, scrolling. Apologies if I miss what anybody's saying, but I'm trying to catch up quickly here. Not a fan of Woody Marks. Fair enough if you don't want to play him. I'm playing a lot, but I get it. He's a rookie. I don't think he's like exceptionally talented or anything. I think that Woody Marks is going to end up being one of my biggest stands. I'm going to have a ton of Woody Marks. Um, Elijah Moore, I think, although that's kind of ownership dependent. I have seen him. The ownership has come up quite a bit elsewhere. So in some places, I am seeing Elijah Moore a little bit steamed, which don't love it as much as what we were saying earlier in the day when I think Run the Sims had him 11%. I think I'm seeing higher elsewhere on Elijah Moore, but yeah, I think some of lower owned value receivers are going to be some of my targets as well. Obviously, I like Josh Allen, James Cook, Nico Collins, the obvious ones, Davis Mills. But outside of the obvious plays, I think like and Woody Marks you might consider an obvious play, but of the obvious plays, I think Woody Marks is the one I'll be the most overweight on at this point. And then kind of a lot of those value wide receivers and tight ends that we'll talk about. Um, all right, moving on to wide receivers. Let me take a sip of my water. Nico Collins kind of stands alone. He is 11,200 projected for 33% flex ownership, 9% captain ownership. Even those numbers, I got to 32% in the flex, so like right with the field, 15% captain, a bit over the field on Nico Collins. Again, we can just look at the games that he has played with Davis Mills. So let me pull that up. So that'd be weeks 10 and 11. Davis Mills has been the starter for the Texans in those two games, 24 targets. Nico Collins, a pretty elite target share for Collins. averaging 114 receiving yards per game. He has on 84% route participation. So everything looks great for Nico Collins with Davis Mills. Um, no issue getting to all the Nico Collins. If he's somebody you want to get to a captain, I think that's totally viable. Not projected for crazy high ownership. I like Nico Collins quite a bit here. Again, it's not going to be the best matchup with the Bills. It is a bottom five, the fifth worst matchup in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed over the past 5 weeks. But again, that's mostly what we're getting in this game. These defenses are generally pretty good, so you can't really be too picky with the matchups here. And Nico Collins, you can just bet on the talent there and the usage. So he's going to look pretty great. And this is, I have no issue with this being a little overweight in the captain spot around the field at flex looks good to me for Nico Collins. Beyond Nico Collins, you have Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel, Christian Kirk, Xavier Hutchinson. And I would describe this as a team that doesn't have a wide receiver 2 and then has essentially 4 wide receiver 3s. And, varying levels in Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel, Christian Kirk, and Xavier Hutchinson. Jaden Higgins is 4,600, projected for 21% flex ownership, 1% captain ownership. Using those numbers, I got to 21% flex, 3.5% captain. So that is good to see. I'm getting to above the field now on Jaden Higgins. That's in line with where I would like to be. And I don't think I need to take much more of a stand in this. Like I'm right with the field in the flex. Triple the field at captain looks great to me for Higgins. I guess I'll just do that breakdown first of just Higgins. Now, again, we can look at just the 2 games he's played with Davis Mills at quarterback, and he's run 51% of the routes. So, still not running a ton of routes, but he has 14 targets in those 2 games, 7 targets per game with Davis Mills. And you can see kind of the progression of his route participation. Has gone up each of the past 3 weeks from 40% to 49% to 53%, and a lot going for him that makes me think that this could be sustainable. First of all, he is a talented rookie wide receiver, I believe a 2nd round pick. I know he was an early draft pick, the earlier of the 2 Texans draft picks, who people thought was going to be really good coming into the year. And we're finally seeing the route participation really skyrocket. I guess not skyrocket, it's going up pretty gradually, but it's moving up for Jaden Higgins, and really promising to see that with Davis Mills. He has been targeted again 14 times over the past 2 weeks. I really like that because we also have, so on the one hand, he is the rookie wide receiver, talented rookie receiver who you would expect to see more work as the season goes on, but also on top of that, probably practiced a lot with Davis Mills. You often see backup quarterbacks have a better connection with backup receivers, and he's been essentially a backup receiver throughout the year. So you'd imagine that they have a lot of work together throughout the year. I think that might be playing into the 14 targets over the past 2 weeks. So Higgins, 4,600 maybe, looks a little expensive for a guy who's running 50% of routes, but also would not be surprised to see this continue to move up later in the year as he's clearly shown a connection with Davis Mills. We've gotten some positive coach speak there on Jaden Higgins, which I kind of cut off the quote on the rookies more generally. But what D'Amico Ryan said was, it was fun to see Higgins and what he's capable of doing. Just a big target on the outside, going up and making contested catches, doing an outstanding job. He's done that all year. We just got to find a way to continue to get him the ball. That was on the 9th. On the 18th, again, head coach D'Amico Ryan said Jaden Higgins has been playing well when we target him. It's a high percentage chance that he's coming down with the football and making plays for us. Seems like they're really excited about Jaden Higgins, trying to get him more involved, as you would expect with a talented rookie receiver later in the year. So Higgins looks great. Outside of Higgins, you have Jalen Noel, again, another rookie receiver, 1,600 projected for 2% flex ownership. I'm now getting 18% in the flex, 1% a captain of Noel. That's because of the 2% projected flex ownership. I'm going to compare that to Roto Grinders because at this level, it's really important. Like if you're getting single digit projected ownership, that's really going to dictate how much you like a given play, how much you're going to get of a given play. Yeah, they even project for 3%. So not a ton higher. It is a little bit higher, but pretty promising to see that he's getting single digit, under 5% ownership across the industry. So Noel's going to look great there. Now, again, he's not somebody who's running a ton of routes, but if we look at his usage with Davis Mills, Jalen Noel 5 targets in those 2 games, which not a ton, 2.5 targets per game, but that's on just 31% route participation, and kind of has all the cases I just laid out for Jaden Higgins apply to Jalen Noel to some extent as well. Like, he is a rookie receiver who was well thought of coming into the year. And now we're seeing him kind of progress, running more routes. And now he's playing with the backup quarterback who maybe has played with a bit more in practice. So they might have more of a connection. He's also just been making plays like for the past month or so. We've seen Jalen Noel looking really good out there. I'm kind of surprised. It's sort of disheartening to see that the route participation hasn't come up more than this. I mean, we saw routes in the 40s for a couple weeks there with Christian Watson out as expected, but then with Watson back, went down to 11% in week 9, and then it's come up, but like hovering around 30%. I think we could still see a game where suddenly Noel is at like 45% route participation here. Wouldn't be like super surprising, just given what we've seen from him. He has looked good. And the coach speak also really positive on Noel. It's a harder read just because we haven't really seen it come up to the extent that we would want it to. But I'm still hopeful that we're going to see at some point the Jalen Noel breakout where they really start using him a lot more. And again, we do have some positive coach speak. On the 17th, just this week, head coach D'Amico Ryan said, I want Jalen Noel in there more, getting more opportunities, but it also depends on the flow of the game. So make of that what you will. But when they say like, oh, I'd love to get him more involved, but that's always tough to get too excited about it when they say stuff like that. On the 18th, offensive coordinator Nick Caley said on what can be done to get Jalen Noel more playing time. He said he's done a good job. We have a bunch of receivers. We have a deep receiver room. We try to mix the groupings in there. Sometimes the flow dictates otherwise. I have a lot of faith in Jalen Noel, and he'll play a lot of football for us. There's nothing he's done that would prevent me from having all the faith in him. So make of that what you will. Like, yeah, we'd love to use him more. To me, that's not super positive on Noel. Like, I'm going to play a lot of Noel. I'm going to be well over the field there. But just based on the coach speak, I'm not seeing anything that's like, yes, we need to. Jalen Noel is the guy that we need to get in there more. It's like, yeah, it kind of depends on, the flow of the game is not exactly what you want to hear, but I think at least like that 30% route participation, I would expect that to hold. And I don't think we're anticipating like the inputs here are not going to be much more than that. So Noel looks really good. And then you have Christian Kirk and Hutchinson, the veterans who have been kind of losing some work. And you can see Christian Kirk projected for 33% flex ownership, 1% cap ownership at 2,800. So getting a ton of ownership. Using those ownership numbers, I got to just 1% in the flex. I'm now going to look at, and then Hutchinson, 3,000 projected for 5% flex. I didn't get to any. I want to compare those ownership numbers, particularly for Kirk, because he's also going to be like very, very dependent on the ownership. Those are some high ownership numbers for Christian Kirk. I mean, RotoGrinders has him at 14%. I might try to split the difference there and see what I would get if I do split the difference on Kirk, because that seems pretty high for a guy like Christian Kirk. So I'll probably cut that back slightly. Xavier Hutchinson, it's tough because he's 3,000, 5% ownership is nice, and like he should still have opportunities, but we've seen those opportunities decrease every week since their week 6 bye. Route participation 76% down to 74, 66, 51, 49%. I kind of my expectation is that it continues to move in the wrong direction for Xavier Hutchinson. But if he's still running 50% of routes at 3,000, like that's not a terrible play. So I think I'll probably try to get to a little bit of Xavier Hutchinson just in case he maintains the role that he has had. And, stranger things have happened than the veteran taking back more of the workload too. So I don't hate the play at 3,000. I do think that he is probably my least favorite of the receivers here. Unless you have Kirk at 33% ownership, that would be my least favorite. I do like the rookies the best other than Nico Collins, of the Texans receivers. But I also think like 3,000 is kind of a fine price tag for a guy running half the routes in Hutchinson. On the Bills side, we've got Khalil Shakir, 8,000. And actually, I should note with the Bills, some moving parts there on the Bills. So let's go over what has changed since last week. Not Keon Coleman. Keon Coleman was a healthy scratch last week. He is a healthy scratch once again this week. So that is staying the same. Curtis Samuel is inactive this week, 44% route participation in week 11. Now that goes somewhere else. And then Mecole Hardman, 6% route participation last week is also, I think he just went on IR. So we have both Mecole Hardman and Curtis Samuel out this week. Elijah Moore in after being a healthy scratch last week. So we lose two receivers, we pick up one. Where are those 50% of routes going to go? Well, that is something we need to figure out. And it's tough to know for sure. Khalil Shakir, kind of the most known quantity with the Bills. He's 8,000 projected for 35% flex, 4% captain ownership. Using those, I got to 25% flex, 4% captain. So not as under the field as I was earlier. I do anticipate being underweight on Khalil Shakir. Doesn't have, the best workload for a player who does have the best workload on the team. I mean, just 5.9 targets per game on 72% route participation. It's, again, he is the best, the most targets on the Bills for the season, but still 5.9 for a wide receiver one is just not that much. He is the slot receiver on the Bills. How much of his, 72% of his routes come from the slot. He's just not somebody who's going to run 90+% of the routes, most likely. And we saw even with Keon Coleman out last week, he actually was down to 63% route participation. So we haven't really seen that moving up for Khalil Shakir. He's fine. Like I anticipate being underweight. He's too expensive for me at his 5.9 targets per game, but he can spike and see 9 or 10 targets in a game, and suddenly 8,000 would look totally fine. And of course, he can get there on fewer. His ADOT is very low. Let's see, on the season, 8 out of just 4.4 for Khalil Shakir. So he's typically, the targets that he gets are going to be short targets that he can catch pretty easily. And then he is a really strong yak player. So he's got yards after catch. He's very likely to get that that short reception, and then he can do something with those short receptions. So I think, Shakir is fine, but he's not a huge priority for me. And I do anticipate being under the field on Khalil Shakir. And then beyond Shakir, we have Josh Palmer, Tyrell Shavers, Gabe Davis, and again, Elijah Moore is back after missing last week. So Josh Palmer, kind of an interesting case. He's 4,200. He had missed several games in a row and then came back for the last one. He's projected for 30% flex, 1% captain ownership. Using those numbers, I got to 14% flex, 2%, 2% captain for Josh Palmer. It's tough to know, so he came back and ran 47% of the routes. It's tough to know if he could take on, more like the Keon Coleman role, because this might have been, kind of easing him back in after being injured for 3 games. They might think now, okay, Josh Palmer, we saw you looked okay. You can run more, and maybe he gets up to 65% of routes here. He might get some of those vacated routes. So I think Palmer looks fine for his price tag of 4,200. Again, he is, I would say, the nominal wide receiver 2 here on the Bills. Again, not really a team that has a wide receiver 2. It's kind of, they're just going to be spreading the ball around most likely. But I think he's probably the most likely of the other receivers to get up to like 60 to 65%, or who knows, he could get more route participation this week. It would be the least surprising to me to see Josh Palmer take on that bigger role. So I think he looks fine, but he is getting 31% ownership. So here you can see I'm well under the field in the flex. I am double the field, I guess, a captain with 2.2%. That looks perfectly fine to me with Josh Palmer. A fine play, not a huge priority. 2% of captain, I think, makes sense because he can, put up some big plays and pay off that salary. Outside of Shakir and Palmer, we've got Tyrell Shavers, Gabe Davis, and then Elijah Moore back. Tyrell Shavers, 2,400 projected for 15% flex and 1% captain. Gabe Davis, 3,800 projected for 9% flex. Elijah Moore, 1,000 projected for 15.5% flex ownership. So this has come up pretty significantly since this morning. Not that, I think it was 11% this morning, so not actually that much. But with those changes, I'm still just getting to 10% total exposure to Tyrell Shavers, a bit under the field there. I'm getting to 15% of Gabe Davis, a little bit over the field there. And then I'm getting massively over the field on Elijah Moore, getting to 46%. A lot of ways you can look at this. I mean, Tyrell Shavers seemed to potentially earn a bigger role last week. If you just look at, we'll pull up just week 11 because that was the game we have with no Keon Coleman and no Dalton Kincaid either. But in that game, Tyrell Shavers, 5 targets on 37.5% route participation. That's a pretty high target share for his little route participation. And he clearly was earning those targets. He did well with those targets. Maybe he earns more. Now, I don't think that the coach speak necessarily is like, yeah, he's a great receiver. We need to get him the ball. It's on the 17th, offensive coordinator Joe Brady said Tyrell Shavers does a lot of the dirty work in the run game. He might not get all the opportunities in the pass game, but he had opportunities yesterday and made the most of them. He's consistently where he needs to be. He was our player of the game yesterday. He was such a critical element to our success, and I couldn't be happier for him. That to me sounds like, yeah, we were happy. We think he's out there for his work in the run game. We were happy that he succeeded when he got the ball in the passing game. I don't get the impression from that they're like, now we're going to get him more involved. We're going to give him 10 targets this game. That would be kind of surprising to me to see Tyrell Shavers suddenly take on a much bigger role. So if he got 5 targets again, like I would love to have that for Tyrell Shavers, but that was sort of an outlier game. But if I get close to the field at 16% at 2,400, like the price is low enough that I think he is a totally fine play at 2,400. Gabe Davis, 3,800, again projected for 9% flex ownership. Last week, 4 targets on 44% route participation for Gabe Davis. I also wouldn't be surprised to see Davis take on a bigger workload. I talked about Josh Palmer being the one that I think is the most likely to continue to take on a bigger workload, but Gabe Davis also ran 44% of routes in that game. He could also step into that wide receiver 2 role. So it's not necessarily going to be Palmer, both kind of running on the outside. I guess both could, see an uptick in usage. At 44% route participation, getting 4 targets. Gabe Davis obviously capable of making some big plays. Happy to be slightly over the field here. Don't have much of a take outside of that. Like I think his ownership is fine at 3,800. Being slightly over the field on a guy who can make big plays makes sense to me. And then Elijah Moore is the one that stands out to me as a player that I want to be above the field on. Now he is getting up. He's up to 16% ownership now. That has moved up, I think, every time I've checked it all day on Elijah Moore. I've actually seen it even higher elsewhere. So the higher it gets, the less of a standout contrarian play that I want to get to. But I still think I really like if he's going to be under 20%, I'm going to like Elijah Moore quite a bit at 1,000. Again, he was a healthy scratch last week, so I'm hopeful that that's going to scare people off of him. But again, project for 16%. I got to 46% total exposure, 45% of it in the flex. I might move off that slightly, but I like Elijah Moore's usage. When he's out there, he is used in a number of ways on the season. I don't have that written down, but he has, I believe, 8 or 6 carries on the season on top of running a number of targets. I thought I had this in my notes somewhere. I'm just trying to look somewhere. I'm not finding it in my notes. But he has been targeted like 14 times on the season, along with, I believe, 6 carries. So they use Elijah Moore in a number of ways. Speedy guy, they'll use him around the goal line. I think somebody this morning suggested an end around. That's exactly like the Elijah Moore experiences. They just move him around a lot, use him in a lot of interesting ways. He can find the end zone via the run, via the pass. Looks good at 1,000. Doesn't need a ton of usage there. And again, we opened up 50% of routes. I think Elijah Moore could take on a good percentage of that. I think that's it as far as receivers. So I'll move on to tight ends. And I'll check in on chat first because I think I'm getting behind here. It is, in fact, not a black flannel, just a V-neck today. All right, let's see here. But I've got the Flaniverse hat on, so that qualifies as my flannel. Damn, 90% Gabe Davis. That's a stance. Game environment. I mean, I think this is going to be pretty low scoring, is my expectation. This is very much wide receiver roulette. I agree with that, Aaron. Does Shavers play in the slot? Let me look at how much Shavers plays in the slot. So on the season, no, 75% out wide, 21% in the slot for Shavers. Yeah, 33 Kirk does seem crazy. Please do hit the like button. Thank you for that reminder, Dan. Yeah, I always appreciate you guys showing some support. No, Moore is active today. Elijah Moore. You're probably thinking of Curtis Samuel. Those might be two receivers that you also get mixed up in your head frequently. I still do for some reason get Elijah Moore and Curtis Samuel. I think just because they're journeymen move around along quite a bit. But yeah, Moore is active today. All right. Moving on to tight ends. I do not have Latu in my. I've seen Sean talking about Latu as a player that is, I believe, active. I think he was called up from the practice squad yesterday from a little note that I saw. Tight end for the Bills. Currently, I don't think we have him getting any kind of work. I guess I can let me see if Rotogran is giving him anything. I don't. I might have missed something. Just I looked up. Is he active? And all I saw was that he was activated from the practice squad according to some headline yesterday. All right. RG has him at 0.3 fantasy points and zero ownership, basically. I guess I'm not expecting much there, but he is in the player pool if you want to get to him. I'm going to start with the ones that are going to get some ownership here. Starting with Dawson Knox is 4,000 projected for 21% flex ownership, 0 at captain. I got to 20 at flex, 3% at captain of Dawson Knox. Pretty strong workload last week for Dawson Knox. I guess just 3 targets with Kincaid out, but he did run 72% of the routes. So really promising to see that with Dalton Kincaid out, and Kincaid, kind of got hurt in week 10. We saw Knox come up to 57% of the routes in week 10, and that continued in week 11, just like running all the routes there. Similar to week 6, we also saw 73.5. So I do think Dawson Knox, like we can expect him to get some work here with Kincaid out. He's very capable as a pass catcher. So Knox looks pretty good at 4,000. Again, I got slightly over the field overall, but just 23% total exposure to Knox. Looks pretty good. Not like a great matchup for tight ends if we schedule by sort by schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed. It is a bottom half matchup, not like horrible, but a slightly negative matchup for tight ends against Houston. And then beyond Knox, we have Jackson Hawes is 2,000 projected for 10% flex, 1% captain ownership. We didn't really see the same thing. I thought with Kincaid out, I think most of us expected Hawes would be more involved. Not the case at all. We actually saw the route participation come down to 9% last week for Hawes. It was Latu who ran 12.5%. So I guess if you want to lean on Latu instead, you can. He did run more routes last week than Jackson Hawes in his first game of the season, apparently, or first game at least running any routes of the season for Kaliki Latu. He's I'd say he is in play at I think he's the bare minimum 200. Hawes at 2,000 becomes a little bit expensive, not much of a priority. I don't know much about Latu, but I guess if you want to play a guy who could get a target, yeah, exactly. You're saying there's a chance on Latu. He did run. He's a classic backup tight end, but a classic backup tight end who's getting 0 ownership and is the min, so you don't really need him to do anything. So Latu, I would say, is playable in a very, very large field, like the largest field contest. Hawes, I think, is playable in also basically just the largest field contest, maybe in some mid-range stuff. But he's 2,000, kind of expensive for a guy who did not. I don't think he saw a target last week. We actually saw 1 target for Latu last week, 0 for Jackson Hawes. So it was actually Latu playing ahead of Hawes last week. But Knox the priority of the Buffalo tight ends. On the Houston side, Dalton Schultz, 6,400 projected for 32% flex, 2% captain ownership. I got to 13% flex, 0% captain. I'm going to push that up just under the assumption that he might continue. He might just continue to excel with Davis Mills. Again, if we look at just the past 2 weeks, the 2 weeks with Davis Mills as a starter, 20 targets for Dalton Schultz. Pretty strong workload. 20 targets on 75% route participation for Dalton Schultz. That's a really, really nice workload for a $6,400 player. So I do think like at least at captain, I would like to be overweight to the 2% he's projected for. I think Dalton Schultz actually a fairly strong play. So I'm going to push up his rates a little bit and get to some Schultz. Cade Stover, 600 projected for 1% flex ownership. I got to 8% of Cade Stover. Again, that was his first game back from injury. He had been out most of the season. Cade Stover came back and immediately ran 15% of the routes. I would expect that number to move up this week at least a little bit. And I don't know if it's going to cut into Schultz or the receivers or where it's going to come from. But I do think Cade Stover pretty likely to see an increase in work here, at least slightly. Just considering like in the first game of the year when he got hurt, he had run 35% of the routes, saw 4 targets in that game. So I think we could see Cade Stover take on a bigger role here. So I like him at 600 to 1% ownership. I think this 8% looks great on Stover. Actually, I think we might actually have some. Let me see if I can find some coach speak. I thought I saw something recently on Cade Stover. So let me find that real quick. Maybe not. Might have just been about his health. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything super recently on Cade Stover in the Coach Speak Index. I guess just on the 27th of October, D'Amico Ryan said Cade Stover is doing a good job. He's working his way back. So it was just about he's getting healthier. I don't think we have anything more recent. But again, he had a pretty good, solid workload in his first game. Maybe he gets back closer to that. All right, moving on to defenses and kickers. Bills projected for 21% flex, 1% captain at 4,800. I got to 27% flex, 6% captain. That looks great. Really strong defense against a backup quarterback. Usually going to be a good play. So I like that I'm getting to 33% of the Bills. That looks great. Cammy Fairbairn project for 26 and 1. I got to 20%. Seems reasonable to me to be slightly underweight, but still getting a fair amount. Matt Prater projected for 36% flex, 3% captain ownership. That's just a lot of ownership for a kicker. I got to 12%. If he does get this kind of ownership, that's kind of where I'd want to be. I'd want to fade that. I don't know if he's actually going to get 40% ownership. So maybe I'll cut back slightly and see what I get. And then Texans defense, 4,400 projected for 11% flex. I got to 13.5% flex and 0.5% at captain. Looks great to me. Wouldn't even mind getting more. Really good, fast defense. Could cause troubles for this Bills offense. All right. So what do I want to do here? I'm going to go back to my inputs. Actually, I'm going to refresh and see if anything has changed. Yeah, now Latu is in there. They don't have him running any routes, it looks like. Yeah, 0% of the market share. Maybe I'll give Latu just a tiny bit of market share here. All right, so I'm going to rerun. Let me just think about some adjustments I might want to make on the Bills side. First, I wasn't really getting to any of Johnson or Davis. Or I was getting to a little bit of Johnson, but not Davis. Would not mind getting slightly more there. But I also wasn't getting to like a crazy amount of Josh Allen. So I don't really want to give them his rushing market share. This is tough. What else can I do to get a little bit more work for Davis and Johnson? I could increase the rushing share overall. This is close because there's nobody that I'm like getting way more of than I'd like to, I don't think. So it's tough to want to move things around too much to prioritize the running backs when I really do like what I'm getting of the receivers. What I could do is move some of the ownership to Elijah Moore. So I'm just going to move Ray Davis down to 1%, Ty Johnson down to 6% projected flex ownership, and then move Elijah Moore up to 19%. I think I'll still get a reasonable amount of Elijah Moore using those numbers. All right, what else? I mean, 42% captain ownership does seem like a bit much for Josh Allen. I'm gonna hedge and move him down to 30% projected captain ownership, and then assume that Ty Johnson can get 1% of captain, Ray Davis 1% of captain, Shakir 5% maybe captain. Trying to think who else might get some captain ownership. Davis 1%. All right, well, we'll go with that. Probably Knox is going to get some, but I'll leave it for now. I thought they had a captain number in there. All right, and then so let's see. Oh, and I'm going to give Latu small amount of work here, I think. Jackson Hawes at 4 and 4. Can I just give Latu and then normalize? Let's see what this does. Yeah, okay, good. Just moved everybody else down slightly, gave 1% to Latu. All right, on the Texan side, again, getting to a lot of, that's right. I can move away from some of my Woody Marks just because I'm getting to so much Woody Marks. So I'm going to move just 5% of this market share from Marks to Chubb. So I'm going to move Marks down to a 60% rushing market share, Chubb up to 27. Of the receivers, was pretty happy with what I was getting for the most part. A little bit, don't totally love that I'm not getting to more of, like, getting to 0 of Hutchinson. Maybe I split that exposure a little bit, bring Hutchinson down to 4%, Knoll up to 3%. See if that changes anything. All right. We'll start there. Then I'm going to run 230 lineups, or more than that, but I'm going to get to a portfolio of 230. Oh, come on. Oh, there we go. Run that. All right, we got the Sims running. People talking about Bills from the 90s. It's a long time ago, guys. Sean Very in on Latu says he's a catching tight end, not a blocking tight end. I mean, he ran more routes than Hawes last week, so I kind of like it as a sleeper. How much Latu are you playing, Sean? Yeah, let's get to 100 likes if we can. 35 more to go, Dan says. Always appreciated. All right. Aaron thinks Woody or Chubb likely to get a touchdown against this porous Bills run defense. It is a bad run defense. Favorite captain? It's a good question. I mean, if Josh Allen actually gets over 30% ownership at captain, it would probably be, I mean, Woody Marks, just at this point, considering ownership, Woody Marks probably the best captain with ownership considered. How am I not at 6K subs? You're right. I'm working on it. Yeah, the Q&A will be a little bit shorter here. Trying to, as I'm running the Sims, I have time anyway. What is the Bane update? Talking about Desmond Bane? We talking basketball? I am not clued in on what's going on in the NBA today. It's all NFL for me on Thursdays. All right, I'll get this second sim running. I'll take a quick look at FanDuel. And then after the second run of sims, I'm going to get out of here. You're right. Brenner says, did you account for Shakir's new father boost? I did not. That's a good point. If you want to account for that, you got to give him a manual boost if you want to account for the new kid narrative. Who is the scariest fade today? I mean, Josh Allen is the scariest fade. Like pretty clearly the scariest fade, I think. All right. Top lineup: Woody Marks with Dawson Knox, James Cook, Josh Allen, Matt Prater, Nick Chubb. Uses the full. Look at the top two both use a full $50,000 salary cap with Woody Marks at captain. Second one has James Cook, Josh Allen, Josh Palmer, Kami Fairbairn, and Nick Chubb. Looking at my player exposures, I am getting to 60% flex. Josh Allen still 13% at captain. I think that I moved him down to 30% projected captain ownership. I'm not sure. Maybe I forgot to do that. Getting to 42 and 5 of Davis Mills. At running back, okay, I'm getting to 61% James Cook plus 13.5 at captain. I could probably move some of my James Cook workload to Ray Davis and Ty Johnson. Woody Marks, I'm getting to 43% flex, 29% captain. So that's closer to where I'd like to be, still well over the field. Now I'm up to 25% Nick Chubb, well over the field there. I don't totally hate that. 6% Ty Johnson. I wouldn't mind getting more there. Would like to get some Ray Davis in there. So we're getting close there. Wide receivers, now I'm at 28 and 8 of Nico Collins. I would like to get to more, I think, of Captain Collins than that. 17 and 2 of Khalil Shakir looks fine to me. 20 and 8 of Jaden Higgins looks good. I'm well over the field at captain, actually right with the field in the flex. Kind of interesting. 18 and 3 of Josh Palmer, so a little under in the flex. Triple the field at captain looks good for Josh Palmer. 21 and 1 of Tyrell Shavers, well over the field now on Tyrell Shavers. Interesting. 11 of Gabe Davis looks good. Ooh, I brought down my Elijah Moore more than I would like to, I think. I'm now at just 9% Elijah Moore. So I moved off some of the workload for Elijah Moore, and now I'm underweight on a player that I really like. So I'm going to have to fix that. 17% Jalen Noel, none of Christian Kirk, 0.4 Xavier Hutchinson. So I've got a little work to do there. I think I need to increase the Houston passing game overall, is what it comes down to. Then we've got at tight end. Yeah, I need to 15% total of Dalton Schultz. I'd like more there. I'm up to 3% of captain, so that's good, I guess. 28% of Dawson Knox for me. I'm over the field there. That looks good. 6% Cade Stover looks good. None of Hawes, none of Latu so far. Kickers and defenses, ton of the Bills. So I think I'm gonna move up the Texans scoring slightly and maybe their passing rate to get to more of the Texans passing game. But generally happy with what I'm getting kickers and defenses wise. All right. And I'm going to download these lineups so that I have something in there. And then I'm going to rerun the Sims one more time before I get out of here. All right. All right. So we've got some lineups in there at the very least. Now I'm going to go back and make some more adjustments. So I'm going to go back to the inputs. And again, I'm going to slightly increase the Texans scoring. I'm going to put them at 20 points, pace up to 61, and the rush rate down to 41. I think that'll get me more of the passing game in general for the Texans, moving up the points and the passing rate. Like should across the board move up the passing game, which I think is what I would like to do there. Also maybe gets me to a little bit less of the Bills. I like the Bills defense, but I don't know that I need to be that far above the field there. I wasn't getting to as much Elijah Moore after making some adjustments. So maybe I need to, all right, let's see. I'm going to bring Tyrell Shavers down to 11% receiving market share. Elijah Moore up to 10%. But I've only got him at 5% receiving market touchdown market share. I guess I've got him at 3.4% rushing touchdown market share. Interesting. All right, that didn't. Okay, we're good. What else? Do I want to get to some Latu? Move him up to 2% maybe? Oh, and I can move some of my James Cook, I think, to the other running backs. So I'm going to move James Cook to 60% rushing market share. Bring Ray Davis up to 8%. Ty Johnson up to 7%. We'll try that. I might consider doing. I'm going to go even more. I'm going to bring James Cook to 58% rushing market share. Johnson up to 8. Davis up to 9. And I brought Josh Allen down to a 32% captain ownership. And still was not getting a ton. Yeah, but I don't really want to move it anywhere else. So I'm gonna run it like this. All right. Gonna look at FanDuel. So MVPs. Nobody getting a crazy high amount of MVP ownership on FanDuel. So Josh Allen looks great at 28%. James Cook 20% seems fine. Nico Collins stands out to me at 8%. I really like Nico Collins at 8% MVP ownership on FanDuel. That's probably the first place I would like to go. Who else? I thought there was another player down here. Maybe not. Schultz looks okay at 2% MVP on FanDuel. That looks pretty good to me. Everybody else mostly just looks fine. So I think, yeah, the standouts to me, like relative to ownership, like everybody, above Schultz and above, I think actually Bills, man, I'm moving to, like, I'm like, could I play Josh Palmer? Josh Palmer actually cheap enough. There's a lot of viable MVPs. I might draw the line at like Knox as the lowest that I would consider getting to. But I think my favorites would be Nico Collins at 8% ownership. And then I think probably 9% Woody Marks is right there. And then probably Allen and Cook are right there. But Schultz at 2% also looks pretty good. In the flex, probably going to be underweight to Davis Mills at 61%. Josh Allen, 59% looks pretty good. Cook, 27% looks fine. Collins, 25% again. Nico Collins looks like he's under-owned on FanDuel. Woody Marks at 21% looks good. Palmer, like, that's a fair price tag at 4,800. Pretty cheap. I kind of like it. Schultz a little bit more expensive here relative to some of the other. Is he? Yeah, so slightly more expensive relative to some of the other cheaper options. Still a pretty good play at 14% ownership on Schultz. Knox at 4,600 looks good. Higgins way more expensive here. A little bit of a tougher pill to swallow there. Noel at 4,200 looks good. 1,000 Cade Stover. I guess that's not that different. I think that's the minimum on FanDuel. Ty Johnson, 3,400 looks better on FanDuel. Yeah, none of these are like screaming at me, these price tags. They all seem kind of okay. Actually, Bills defense at 6,400. I mean, I guess they're getting a lot of ownership for that reason, but yeah, they look too cheap. All right. Yes, sir. I'll be going with Math if he qualifies for the dog bowl. All right. Top lineup now: Nico Collins, captain with Bills, Davis Mills, Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel, and Josh Allen. So here's a naked Josh Allen top lineup here. Second lineup: Woody Marks, Dawson Knox, James Cook, Josh Allen, Kemi Fairbairn, Nick Chubb. As far as my player exposures now, quarterback, I'm getting to, man, 58% Josh Allen, only 10% at captain is very scary. But I'm up to, man, 70% Davis Mills. So I moved up the Houston passing game. Obviously, that affects Davis Mills quite a bit. I'm now at 78% total exposure to Davis Mills. Don't love that, to be honest. I probably moved it up too much. Running backs, I'm now at, I moved way off James Cook unintentionally. I need to make some adjustments here. So I probably need to move that back more, but I'm now at just 2% captain, and I like James Cook as captain. So don't love that. 39% at flex. I moved away a lot of his workload and also moved up the Houston passing game. So probably should have anticipated this. Now at 30% Woody Marks captain plus 37% flex. Might have put a filter on there. 18% Nick Chubb, 8% Ty Johnson, still just 0.4% Ray Davis. So did not successfully get where I need to go. Wide receivers, I'm at 31% and 21% Nico Collins, so did move that up successfully. I'm now at 23% Khalil Shakir in total, 4% a captain, 31% Jaden Higgins plus 6 a captain, 12.6 plus 4 of Palmer, 19% Elijah Moore now. So still just right even with the field. Don't totally love that. 10% Tyrell Shavers, 11% Gabe Davis, 21%, 22% Jalen Noel. Very little of Kirk and Hutchinson. Now at 28%, Dalton Schultz, 23% Dawson Knox, 6% Cade Stover, none of Jackson Hawes or Latu. Kind of scary, but not my biggest priorities. And then I'm getting to 23% Bills plus 5 at captain, 15% Texans. That looks great. 16.5% Fairbairn, 9% Prater. Seems fine. Unfortunately, I do need to get out of here. So there are some adjustments I need to make, but I don't really have time to make them. I need to get moving. Appreciate all of you hanging out with me during this stream. Again, I'll be back I'll be doing on Saturday. I will be doing Outside the Box with Scott Barrett on the Fantasy Points YouTube channel. I'll be back here for Sunday Night Football. You can find me there. So I'm going to get out of here. Good luck tonight, everybody. Let's win some money. Please let me know when you do make some money. I always love to see people winning money on the streets. If you want to join the Flannelverse Discord, it is free to join. There's a link in the description of this video. But again, I got to get out of here early today. So apologies for that. Appreciate all of you. And I'll see you next time. Good luck to